Well, 2019, as you know, marks the 40-year anniversary of formal diplomatic ties between the United States and China. And we've seen a lot of highlights during those 40 years, but I think most people would agree the last year would probably not be one of them. A lot of tension between these two countries. Where do you see things as we head into 2019?
Well, if we have a more historical perspective, we could see a lot of things happened toward the end of 1978 and beginning of 1979. For instance, China is celebrating 40th anniversary of its reform and opening up. But actually, that historic decision was taken almost at the same time as the decision for diplomatic relations between our two countries. So I think that these two major developments were closely interrelated. It showed a major change of China's perception of the world, and it's a refocusing of China's domestic and foreign policies. And China has been following this path, the path of peaceful development, of reform and opening up, and building good relations with the rest of the world, including in particular the United States. China has been following this path consistently over the last 4 decades.
You talked about China's perception. I was growing up in Southern California. I can still remember looking at the LA Times, seeing pictures of Mao and Nixon, and China seemed so far off and exotic. I'm just curious, you were in China at that time, looking at the United States. Did you view the United States much the same way?
Well, when our two countries established formal diplomatic relations, I had no chance to go to another country. At the time of Mr. Deng Xiaoping's historic visit to the United States in early 1979, in late January 1979, I was doing my graduate studies in Shanghai. And you see, at the time, we had no TV at home. So we had to go to a relative's house to watch a black and white TV for live coverage of the ceremony at the White House and his performance at Lincoln Center, and he wearing the cowboy hat in Texas. It was really amazing and eye-opening for us.
I remember talking to you prior to the Mar-a-Lago summit, and you were hopeful about the relationship between the United States and China and building on the new president's administration. There was the Mar-a-Lago summit, and then of course Trump came to China. It seemed as though there might be a few bumps along the way, but the relations really kind of hit some hard times in 2018 with the tariffs, the tit-for-tat tariffs. And then just recently, we had China being accused of hacking. I wanted to read with the FBI director how he described it at a press conference. China's goal, simply put, is to replace the U.S. as the world's largest global superpower. How would you respond if you were to talk to him directly?
I think he totally misunderstands China's goal, China's policies, Chinese history, Chinese culture, and Chinese people. Our goal is very simple and clear: to bring better life to our people, to meet their aspirations for better life. And this is a legitimate and inalienable right of any people. And we believe we can only do this by working together with other countries, because we are living in a globalized world. Whether you like it or not, this is a fact of life. And no country can really develop, prosper, and get stronger all by itself. This is impossible, even for a superpower like the United States. And we in China, we certainly don't believe so. So we are open and ready to work with other countries to build a community of nations with a shared future. And we believe China can only achieve long-term prosperity and stability if we have a more stable and peaceful and prosperous world. And now we are ready to contribute to that.
This dinner between President Xi and President Trump at the G20, it seemed like there's a cooling off period that goes till March. Obviously, China's made some gestures, buying soybeans, a reduction in tariffs. How do you see the relationship going moving forward? I mean, do you see discussions kind of growing, or where are we at?
You see, I was very fortunate to be present at that dinner in Buenos Aires. I think it was a very warm dinner, and the discussion were frank, of course, but also friendly. They reached important agreement between them. So I don't think this is a cooling period. I would rather see it as a warming up period. Warming up for more work, more cooperation and coordination between the two sides. Warming up for a better relationship. And we are committed to doing this with the American side.
How do you continue to warm it up? Because that's the sticking point, isn't it?
Well, at present, we have to work together on the economic and trade issues. Hopefully, we'll produce a mutually acceptable, mutually beneficial outcome. And that will certainly help us to address issues in other areas.
You mentioned recently that the world is changing rapidly. Both the United States and China need to have reforms. It seems like the U.S. has a laundry list of the reforms they'd like to see out of China. We hear about them almost every day. One doesn't hear the other side of this. What type of changes would you like to see from the United States?
Well, first of all, I think maybe this is the case for all countries, but particularly for large countries like China and the United States. The most fundamental challenge for us is governance at home. One of my good friends in America, Richard Haas, wrote a book a few years ago entitled Foreign Policy Begins at Home. I agree with him. But of course, it's up to the American people to decide what kind of a domestic policy, domestic reform they would like to carry out. I'm not going to make any comments on these things. But I just hope the United States could be more aware of the fact that as the only superpower in the world, its domestic policy would also have spillover effect on other countries.
Well, speaking of the domestic landscape, we saw the Secretary of Defense resign this week. He, and many are saying, not just him, but other foreign policy advisors, kind of caught flat-footed by the president's decision on Syria. Then you see Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi coming to an agreement with the President of the United States so that the government can stay open. Then conservative commentators criticize this. Then Trump reverses himself. There's an unpredictability at the White House of late. As a diplomat, how do you deal with that?
Well, I have talked to ambassadors of many other countries. I think we all have the same feeling that everybody is watching very closely what is happening here. Although we don't have anything to do with this, but we are fully aware whatever happens here would have some major impact on the rest of us.
There's a New Yorker article recently that said Angela Merkel watched Apprentice and read his book and tried to. Have you done anything like that to try and prepare how you deal with the White House and Donald Trump? He's rather unpredictable.
Well, you see, you have change of administration here every 4 years or every 8 years. And they could have U-turns in policy. But for the rest of the world, for the rest of us, hopefully Americans could be more aware that we still look at the United States as the same country. So sometimes it's not so easy for us to catch up and to adapt. But we are doing our best.
How about how the United States perceives China? Do you find that perhaps it has stronger animosity towards China of late? And why might that be the case, do you think?
I think between ordinary people of our two countries, there's a very natural sentiment of friendship. I could feel this, I could see this whenever I travel to states, to cities, towns in America. The people there are very friendly. Maybe they don't have sufficient knowledge about China, but certainly there's no hard feeling towards China. And at the same time, there's a growing mutual needs and common interests between our two countries. So if we base ourselves on these facts, we could have the confidence that the long-term relationship will be good and stable.
Where do you see the relationship going in 2019? How do things change?
Well, I hope it will develop in a very positive direction, but we have to work hard on that.
Tariffs, do you see them coming down on both sides?
Well, they should not be there in the first place.
And so if you were to have a message for the American people about 2019 and this relationship between the United States and China, what might it be?
I would like to wish them Happy New Year. And I would hope to see that the aspirations of the American people, the ordinary Americans, for better life will be fulfilled.
And invite them to China?
Of course, we would also fulfill our Chinese dream.
Ambassador, always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.